It's homework time. Homework time. Here we go. All right, we are on lesson 10. Let's start, as always, by jotting our name down so that if you turn your homework in to some sort of teacher, class, you get credit for the work you did because you put your name on it. Don't write my name, though. This is, write your name. And then for the date, go ahead and put today's date. I'm writing today because I think that's amusing, but you actually put whatever today's date is for you. Okay, so in this lesson, we're taking a number, and in number 1 here, we're going to round the same number to different places. And at this point, I'm also kind of assuming you know how to do this. If not, you can go back and review some of the previous lessons. This is just more of a practice kind of lesson than really a teaching one. So we won't be drawing out number lines and such on this one. We'll just be doing the work. All right, let's look at number 1. The number we're rounding is 845,001. Okay, 845,001. And we'll round it first to the nearest thousand. So we have 5 thousands. The next thousand up would be 6,000. Midpoint would be 5,500. This is only 1 over, so obviously, what are we rounding it to? That's right, it would get rounded to 845,000. You can see it's only 1 away from that 1,000, so that one's pretty clear cut. And next up, we're going to round to the nearest 10,000. Our 10,000, what we could say, as we've been doing, we have 84 10,000s. 84 10,000. So what would be 10,000 more? Another 10,000 would be 85 10,000s. We could also call that 850,000. So 840,000 to 850,000 is our range. Midpoint would be the 5,000 mark, 845,000. And anything at or above that point would round up to the 850,000. As you see, we're actually 1 above that point, so there's no doubt we would round this up to 850,000. 850,000 is the 10,000 it's closer to than 840,000. And then when we look at the 100,000 place, I'll draw a little arrow there, we have 800,000s. 100,000 more would be 900,000. Midpoint would be 850,000, so 845,000 falls below that midpoint, so we'd round it down, and as you recall, our low point was, we have 800,000, so the nearest 100,000, yes indeed it do, is 800,000. Alright, so that's number 1, done. Do you see this one? Gosh, they're putting us through the ringer here, running the gauntlet of rounding. Well, let's dive in, shall we? And notice, I just kind of take a preview before we do jump in. A, B, and C we're rounding to the nearest 100. D, E, F to the nearest 1,000. G, H, I to the nearest 10,000. J, K, L to the nearest 100,000. So we have 3 sets of each there. So. And you see the number, the length of the numbers changes, so out to the hundreds, out to 10,000s, 100,000s, and so there's kind of a pattern to it. So let's jump right in. To the nearest 100, so this number has 7 hundreds, 100 more is 800, the midpoint is 750, this falls above the midpoint, we round it up to 800, you got it. Next number. Look at the number of hundreds. We could actually say there are 127 hundreds. Or we could say there's 12,700 would be our low point. So 12,700, what's 100 more? 12,800. Midpoint would be 12,750. And notice that there's a distinct similarity between B and A here. We're just kind of tacking on that 12,000 and changing the ones digit, which changes nothing. So these are pretty much the same idea. So again, it's going to round up to that 800 mark, but in this case it's 12,800. And looking at C. Let's we have this 951,000. Then we look, though, we're still rounding to the nearest hundred, so in the hundreds place we have 100. What's 100 more but 200? Midpoint between 100 and 200, 150. This obviously would fall above that, so we'd have our 951,000. Can't forget about that. We're rounding up to the nearest hundred of 200. All right, looking at D, E, and F, rounding to the nearest thousand. So here we have 1,000. 1,000 more is 2,000. Midpoint would be 1,500. This number, 1,258, would fall below the midpoint, so we'd round down to, you got it, 1,000. That's the closest 1,000. And we look at the next one. 65,124. We have, well, we could say it this way. We have 65 thousands. What would be 1,000 more? 66 thousands. Midpoint, 65,500. This would fall below that midpoint, so we would round it down to 65 thousands, aka 65,000. Moving quickly here, I told you. Next up, we have 99,451. And when you see nines, you know they're up to something, those sneaky little Eureka mathematicians. Okay, so we have 99 thousands. Let's definitely think of it that way, 99 thousands. What's 1,000 more than 99 thousands but 100 thousands? And our midpoint would be 99,500. 500 being half of 1,000, and this falls below that midpoint. Surprisingly, you think they'd have us rounding up here to make it a little trickier, but no, it's going to round down to, you got it, our lower point was 99 thousandths. So 99,000 is what it rounds to. Now let's look at G, H, and I rounding to the nearest 10,000. This first one, G, we have 60,488. You're probably getting to the point where you could just look at that and say, oh, that rounds to. Well, let's do it anyway. Okay, we have 60,000s, or we could say we have 6 10,000s. 10,000 more would be 70,000, or 7 10,000s, we could also say. Midpoint would be, what would it be? 65,000, right, because that's 5,000 is half of 10,000. So 60,000, 65,000, 70,000 are points on our mental vertical number line. You see this falls right below that midpoint, or actually substantially below that midpoint. It's much closer to 60,000, right? All right, so that's our nearest 10,000. Is 60,000. Looking at the next one, we see something similar because we have that even 80,000. You could probably glance at this. I'm going to spill the beans. You could probably glance at this and say, that rounds to 80,000 because look, there are no thousands. But quickly, 80,000 is our base point, obviously. 90,000 is 10,000 more. Midpoint is 85,000. This falls below, rounds down to 80,000. That's the full thought process. And one more in the 10,000 range. Let's see if this one's trickier. They usually are. Oh yeah, we got that naughty 9 there. Now how many 10,000s are there? Well. We could say there are 89 10,000s, couldn't we? 89 10,000s, also known as 890,000. 89 10,000s, what's another 10,000? 90 10,000s. So 890,000 to 900,000, that's our rounding range. Midpoint between 890 and 900,000 would be 895,000. Gets a little trickier to picture with these wacky numbers, huh? And then this 897 obviously falls above that midpoint of 895. And so 897,100, rounded to the nearest 10,000, rounds up to, that's right, 900,000. And what might make this type of example a little confusing is that the 10,000 mark is also an even 100,000. But if you think about it, if you were skip counting in this range by 10,000s, you'd say 860,000, 870,000, 880,000, 890,000, 900,000, 910,000, 920,000. So you see how 900,000 falls as an even 10,000, skip counting by 10,000s. Let's finish up here. We have 808, these ones will be easier. 880,005 rounded to the nearest 100,000. Well, we have 800,000, 100,000 more is 900,000. Midpoint would be 850,000, 50,000 being half of 100,000. Would this fall above or below the midpoint? 880, more than 850, yes. So this falls above, so we're rounding up to 900,000. And notice how these, both I and J, round to the same number, even though we're rounding to different places. In K, 545,999, and those nines there are kind of meant to throw you off and trick you into thinking, oh, well, I must be rounding up because we got all these nines. But look at it. What's our lower point in that mental vertical number line? 500,000s we have. That's 100,000 more. 600,000. Midpoint, 550,000. Ah, and you see 545 falls below 550, so we're rounding down. As you recall, our lower point was how many 100,000s there? 500,000. So it rounds down to 500,000. Those nines, in this case, don't make a bit of a difference. They could be zeros, ones, nines, whatever. They're not going to affect how we round. What mattered in this case was the number in the 10,000s place. And lastly here, we have 689,114, rounding to the nearest thousand. Well, we have 600,000s. Another 100,000 would be 700,000s. Midpoint would be 650,000s. And 689 comes above 650. So we're rounding up to, that's right, 700,000. 700,000. Okay, woo! You thought that was going to be a lot harder than it was, right? No problem. Let's move on and with this little homework time. And number 3, with this topic that's near and dear to my heart, running. Solve the following problems using pictures, numbers, or words. Oh, I love when they give us a choice. So, part A. In the 2011 New York City Marathon, 29,867 men finished the race and 16,928 women finished the race. Each finisher was given a t-shirt. About how many men's shirts were given away? About how many women's shirts were given away? Explain how you found your answers. So we have 3 things we need to do here. I always like to kind of keep count so I don't forget something. How many men's shirts, how many women's shirts, and then explain. Well, it says we can use pictures, numbers, or words, and so I'm going to kind of use a picture and numbers here. That's how we're going to roll. I'm going to do just a vertical number line. That'll give us a perfect explanation. Looking at the men's race and the women's racers, we have numbers that are in the 10,000s. So we could round to either the nearest 1,000 or 10,000. And you could go either way here. I'm going to choose, though, to round to the nearest 1,000, and here's why. Because the women's number is relatively low compared to the men's number. It's just 16,000, and although it does, I'll give it away, it would round up, rounding to the nearest, it's a pretty big jump in rounding to round it to the nearest 10,000. I think it's a little more precise to round it to the nearest 1,000. So let's start with the men's. How many thousands do we have? Yes, we have 29 thousands. And what is one more thousand? Well, one more than 29 is, yes, 30,000. And what would our midpoint be? Well, half of 1,000 is 500, so 29,500 is our midpoint. And where does our number fall? That's right, 29,867 would fall up here. So we would be rounding up to 30,000, which, by the way, you probably realize is exactly what we'd round to if we're rounding it to the nearest 10,000 anyway. But we do see something different, and appreciably different, in the women's number. So how many thousands do we have there? Well, we have 16,000. 16,000s. And what would be 1,000 more than 16,000s? Yes, indeed, 17,000s. And our midpoint would be the 500 mark between the thousands. So 16,500. And where would 16,928 fall? Yes, way up towards 17,000. And you see why here I made the choice to round to the nearest 1,000. Because it would round up to 20,000, to the nearest 10,000, but then you're rounding up over 3,000 shirts. And in my mind, 3,000 shirts is a whole lot of shirts. Makes a substantial difference. So I think it's a little more precise to round to nearest 1,000, although certainly you wouldn't be wrong to do otherwise. So we see, and when we could just make a simple statement about 30,000 men's and 17,000 women's. Notice the possessive apostrophe S there, so I'll point that out. T-shirts were given away. Although that makes it sound like they're free, and you do pay to run in these races, but I won't quibble. Okay, explain how you found your answers. Yeah, I rounded. What did we round to? That's an I. I rounded to the nearest 1,000. And if I were to want to, and I'm not going to, add a numerical explanation, I would simply use my happy little squiggly equal sign and say, 29,867 is about equal to 30,000. 16,928 is about equal to 17,000. That would be explaining it in the number sentence. Let's go on with 3B. All right, 3B. Now, 3B, it can be a little tricky here because it seems like we're continuing right on from the previous example. In a sense, we are, because we're still dealing with the New York City Marathon. But notice this is the 2010 Marathon, and so this question kind of has absolutely nothing to do with the previous question. So in that year, 42,429 people finished the race and received a medal. Before the race, the medals had to be ordered. If you were the person in charge of ordering the medals and estimated how many to order by rounding, would you have ordered enough medals? Explain your thinking. So just looking at this, the key here is that if we were to round this number, 42,429, to either the nearest 10,000 or the nearest 1,000, in both cases the number would round down. And then you wouldn't have enough medals. And the whole point of this question is an essential one, which is that, does my answer make sense? If you round down, you're going to be short medals or T-shirts or whatever it is you're doing. So we can start by saying that 42,429 would round to what? To either, well, to the nearest 10,000, it would be 40,000, right? I think you're getting a point where you can just look at these numbers and round them, right? To either 40,000 or 42,000, really that's a 2, both of which would leave you what? That's right. Would leave you short of metals. And this isn't the only way of putting this, of course. It's just phrasing I'm coming up with at this moment. You can explain this many different ways. So what would you have to do then? Let's go a step further here. Right. So if you rounded, what would you have to do after you rounded? Yeah. You'd have to add on or purposely round up. Kind of ignore the rules of rounding there and round up to have enough. Round up to have enough. And maybe I can even put in parentheses here. Either if I rounded it up, kind of falsely, ignore the rules of rounding and just round it up, say maybe to the next 10,000, so I've rounded up to 50,000, or rounding up 1,000, again, ignoring the rules of rounding, say 43,000. And although you could certainly go on quite a bit more, that explanation makes it clear you understand what you're doing and that you can't just blindly round, because in real life things don't always work so simply. Let's finish things out with 3C now. All right, 3C, we're rounding things out here, finishing it out. Okay. Now, again, this question relates to the previous two, but is not directly connected to them. So in 2010, 28,357 of the finishers were men, and 14,072 of the finishers were women. About how many more men finished the race than women? To determine your answer, did you round to the nearest 10,000 or 1,000? And explain. Well, now you see why back in part A I insisted on rounding to the nearest 1,000, because again here you can look at it and say, oh, if we round to the nearest 10,000, that 14,000, we could see right off, would round down to 10,000, and that's a 4,000 runner jump. And so you're not going to have much accuracy there. We want to round to the nearest 1,000 here to get a little bit more accuracy in our answer. And so we can use numbers to explain. It's set up in the directions. So we can say 28,357 is about equal to, well, what's the nearest thousands? Yes, this would round down to 28,000. I think you're getting to a point where you can look at these and get it pretty quickly in your head. And then 14,000, and by the way, I'm lining it up this way on purpose. You'll see why. 72 is about equal to what? Yes, we'd round that to the nearest 1,000 of 14,000. Well, I was going to be lazy and just subtract them right here, but I'll rewrite it. All right, fine. So 28,000. We want to find how many more, so obviously the operation is subtraction. We want to find the difference between these numbers, how many more. And when we subtract, you could probably glance at these numbers, and if you do a lot of number work, you say, 14 doubled is 28, so the difference is 14,000. You can, of course, go through and do it column by column there, but the difference is indeed 14,000. So how many more men finished the race than women? We can say about 14,000 more men than women finished and to determine your answer, did you round to the nearest 10,000 or 1,000, and why we did it? Okay, I rounded. What did we round to? The nearest 1,000. And why did we do that? Because always rounding to a smaller place value is going to give you a more accurate answer, closer to the exact. In fact, we would get here, the difference would be 20,000, which sort of overstates the case, I think. That's too much of a difference. I rounded to nearest 1,000. And why did we do that? To be more accurate. Or to, let's be a little fancier in our wording, to obtain a more exact answer. How's that? Because there is a difference between 14,000 and 20,000. Well, hey, great job. Look at that. Time flies when you're having fun. Homework time is over. See you next time.